Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.
This episode is brought to you by Orgain. Orgain creatine monohydrate helps improve muscle size, strength, and power when combined with a regular exercise and weight training routine. It supports brain health, and it's certified with informed choice, so you can compete with confidence. Studies show that creatine may support brain health in vegetarians and aging individuals. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease.
Welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast. Today, we're going to talk about S.E.R.E. That's Survive, Evade, Resist, and Escape. So, I don't know if we're going to talk about each one of those in equal parts, but we're going to definitely cover everything here. The Air Force, basically after Vietnam, when they had, the POWs and stuff like that, the Hanoi Hilton, Jane Fonda, all the things that bring happy memories, they started thinking, we need to come up with a plan to make sure this doesn't happen and to prepare people how to deal with it. You don't want them to be scarred for life and end up like John McCain, right? We can't have that. So basically, to get right into it, it's basically, initially like a game of hide and seek. When there's bad guys out there looking for you, or, you're, trying to get away, you need to, find a way to disappear. And that's really the trick. And a lot of people are, short-sighted. Do you know your surroundings? Do you know what you're around? There's kind of two different approaches for, wilderness and outside, and versus maybe in a building, in the mall, or on the streets in the city. There's different ways you're going to want to look at it and approach the whole situation. So, obviously we would never run from the police, and they're there to protect us, and we love all law enforcement officers. But let's say hypothetical that we're in North Korea and we're hanging out, and, things don't appear as friendly, and we're not sure that Trump's really going to work out a deal to get us freed if we get caught. And we're hanging out, smoking cigarettes on the corner, tearing down propaganda posters. And the policemen are like, "Hey, you, come here. I want to talk to you." And we're like, "Whoa, what do you do?" So, one, I think creating a false sense of ease might be, a good approach. Like, "Oh, hey, buddy." Again, if you think you're far enough away, and any time that you waste talking to the police, they're going to close that gap between the two of you. You want to just bolt. You want to, one, be in shape. That's why these things matter. But two, you want to be ready to move. You got to be sure that the people you're with, if you're in a group, are able to, react it the same way, and you got to consider your plan of escape to relate to how well they can move. Or maybe you need to create a distraction if these are people you care about, that you put, their life over yours, maybe your family, maybe your kids, your wife. So, if you're far enough away, you might just want to disappear. Now, obviously, this is not in a friendly world that, this is in a world where these people are not exactly out to help you out. So, that immediate, put as much distance between you and them as possible. And, if you think that you're in the middle of a field, like I said, that changes things. We're going a different way. But if you can get to cover right away, that may be, the initial move. If you're close enough, the guy comes up and taps you on the shoulder and is like, "Oh, excuse me, sir, I can't help but notice you're ripping down those propaganda posters, and we frown on that here in North Korea." Well, then you might want to kind of put the guy at ease and talk to him and, "Oh, I didn't know. I was confused. I thought that was a anti Kim Jong-un poster, and I wanted to get rid of it because I didn't want anybody else to see it. I didn't understand the language." But then as you're creating that, that ease, that peace, then, you want to look for the moment when you can kind of try and get out of there. Now, there's another moment. There's this guy bigger than you, probably doesn't happen in North Korea, but, who knows, comes up, puts his hand on your shoulder, and, man, he just slaps cuffs on you or zip ties or, duct tape or whatever. That's another story. Then we got to look at the next step, So you just kind of got to be ready. You got to be, paying attention to these things. You don't get caught in that tight situation. The first thing is survive. And being aware and not putting yourself in that kind of condition, moving in a more clandestine kind of mode, maybe being the gray man, that kind of stuff. That kind of mindset is what's going to be, your initial survival. You're going to want to be able to, not get into the situation where this is going to be, the issue where it's life-threatening and you're concerned for your life and your safety. Being locked up abroad, we'd talked about that in the past, is not something that anybody wants to ever experience. So anyway, just a thought there. So the initial contact, you're going to want to basically, get away as quick as possible. Maybe some martial arts might be in your repertoire. Maybe it's something you need to look into. There are a couple of moves when people grab you to be able to resist. If you don't have any of those, I'll try and put some links in the show notes. Put some stuff for the YouTube there. But you basically need to find a way to break away and disappear. Now, that's just the starting point. So now the next thing, it's survive and then evade, right? So we're going to evade capture. Now, what that means is you need to get out of sight, and you need to get out of sight fast. Now, the problem is you can't duck into an alley and then, I'm just going to jump behind this garbage can and hide here. He'll never see me. Well, that's cool, but cops have radios and they talk to people, and they're going to come search the alley, and they're going to make sure. So you need to find a way to keep moving and get out of the area as fast as possible. Maybe if it's one guy, it's 2 a.m, you don't think he's going to be able to get back up there right away. Maybe you hide somewhere where you think it can get you another moment to either slip out or, run away once he gets to the other end of the alley. That's a different story. But if he knows he's got you cornered in, it's going to be a problem. He's going to take his time, do a thorough search, and you need to prepare for that. You need to, run in the right direction. You need to think before you act. And that's always, kind of what we have to do as preppers. That's this whole prepare thing that we do. You need to have a way to, have a plan, all right, what am I going to do here? What's around me? Where can I go? But definitely disappearing and out of sight is definitely going to be your motive. Now, there's also like through the woods. That's kind of a different thing. There's different things you can think of. If you can move with like herd animals, I know, farm, whatever. I don't know where that's happening. Maybe change your gait, maybe some like decoy tracks. They talk about people, walking and coming back around on their own tracks. So that way it kind of splits off into two, and hopefully one of the split offs you can do a little more discreetly. That kind of stuff. Now, another thing that's really an issue with evasion is dogs. If somebody's coming after you with dogs, you're in big trouble. One, dogs are pretty friggin' smart, and they can smell stuff. I don't know if you guys remember way back we talked about tracking, and it was like, just your skin cells. Dogs can smell, thousands of times greater than what we can. And they're going to notice the littlest things. So there's a couple of tips, helpful things you can do when avoiding somebody chasing you with dogs. One, you want to put as much distance between you and the animal. Well, that just sounds like common sense. But also, it's going to get harder to track when when you're further away. They're going to smell less. You want to try and move through harsh terrain. Stuff that's, going to be difficult for the handler to follow, and maybe even difficult for the dog to follow. Now, obviously, you might be a little bit more willing to get some pricker thorns and stuff stabbed in your side. You might be a little more willing to get your clothes torn or crawl through the mud that maybe somebody, in their police uniform and all their gear might not be willing to do. That's, something to talk about. All these movies, how they always talk about, oh, I'm going to go in the stream and I'm going to go up the stream and then the dog's not going to be able to follow my scent. Well, in a way that's true, and that's kind of a good thing. But what happens is when you're wet, you end up having a greater smell about you, and it actually becomes easier for the dog to smell you when you come out wet. So if there's any way you can cross water with maybe a zip line or, through the tree branch or something like that, if you can stay out of the water and cross it, excellent. That's the way you want to do it. You do not want to end up just trudging through the water, because you're just going to regret it. You're not going to help anything. And, so just keep that in mind when you're doing that. I read an article, they were like, oh, well, if you put petroleum jelly on your skin, then your skin cells won't fall off. That sounds completely impractical and ridiculous to me, but I thought I'd put it out there because somebody felt it was worth mentioning. They mentioned maybe making sharp, large turns. Basically like going in a big circle. Kind of makes the handler question the dog. Like, why would somebody running away do this? This doesn't make any sense. And that you just start to put that doubt in their mind. So that's something you can do. Might help. They also mentioned, and this is basically my research, other podcasts, books, different things I've read over the years, videos on S.E.R.E training. If you can travel with the wind, if you're going against the wind, it's actually blowing your scent right towards the dog. And believe it or not, it really makes a difference. If you're going with the wind, it's kind of going with you, and that will actually help you to keep moving forward and, away from the sniffing dog. So with that, well, next on my list is resist. Now, resist would actually be, fighting and trying to get, stop your attacker, your assailant. We're assuming, you're following the laws and doing the right thing here. You're following the moral code of the world. And, hey, when it comes to that, this is your life. Is there a way that you can get out of there? Believe it or not, sometimes the risks, this is, back to preparing. One, preparing to know how to fight, to know how to protect yourself. But two, to prepare yourself mentally. Decide where you are, what level of risk are you willing to take? some people would think, oh, I would never, hit a law enforcement officer in the face and run away. And again, I'm talking about in strange, extreme circumstances of, whatever. But is this going to mean your life? Is this going to be the life of your family? Is this, what's going to, what are the consequences to whatever, you're about to face? Now, obviously, you want to think about consequences before you do actions that'll lead you down this road or take you into a bad place. But once you're in that position, maybe this is a risk that you decided was worth taking. This is something you were willing to do in order to, not have problems. So you need to, go in with a plan and be ready to deal with the consequences. And if that means, brutal, violent attacks, maybe that's what it takes to get you out and to freedom. So you need to decide a plan and how you're going to be, because you're going to be able to react so much quicker, so much more confidence and force if, you go into this with the right mindset. Now, resist, they actually, what I was saying, kind of fighting back, that's still kind of more the evading capture that they're talking about in this mindset. Resisting is also, once you've been captured and you're hanging in your bamboo cage over, swinging from a tree in the middle of nowhere and they're poking you with sticks. Resisting is not giving in, not, divulging, information, not, helping them with propaganda of, oh, Kim Jong-un is treating me humanely and I really realized that America was wrong and bad and, whatever. So this is kind of that kind of thing. The, name, rank, serial number kind of thing where you don't divulge all your stuff. Now, I don't know. I got to tell you, back when I was in boot camp, I really feel that they do a good job of basically having you put your mind somewhere else. That was a big thing for me. Like in the Navy, you go out to sea for 6 months, 8 months, 9 months at a time, and you don't get to see your family and whatever. And I got very good at compartmentalizing. Basically putting your mind in a different place. Like in this aspect, it would be, I would think of, I deal with my family and that kind of stuff when I'm at home. I just really think about work and that is my life. Guys who were thinking about their family all the time while they're out at sea, they're just miserable and they're crying and they're unhappy and they're sad and they're lonely. And you just really have to kind of focus as, well, my life when I'm out at sea is this, and you focus on that. And I think they really push that kind of mindset in boot camp. And it's really something that's going to apply, if you end up getting captured. It's, all right, this is my world. And then what, is in my world? My world is to gather information, intelligence about the bad guys while I'm here. I can see who's in charge. I can see how their operation works, what's set up, maybe get clues of what they're planning. Maybe I'll be exposed to some stuff. Now, if I'm in a concrete cell and all I get is, food slipped under the door, once a day, a piece of bread or something, well, no, I'm not really gathering much information from that. But even that, how many different voices I'm hearing that are coming to the door, different, things going on. You can be gathering information at the same time the enemy is gathering information. That's something you need to be aware of. And, I heard a story of, a POW, one of the guys back in Vietnam, who memorized the social security numbers of everybody there he was captured with. And he just, committed it all to memory. So when he ended up getting released, he was able, because they made a deal when, what's her name? Hanoi Jane there, Jane Fonda came over, and they let somebody go, and this guy had, memorized all the information, and, they were like, oh, a sign of goodwill, we'll let this guy go. And he ended up having, the names or, the social security numbers of all these different people. Well, that ended up being, collecting useful information. And that's what you need to do. If you can just even notice when you're being brought in, the layout of things, how things are going on, how things are set up, these might be things that help in your escape. And they might also be things that, help your organization in a way to defeat these people later on. So that's something you want to be aware of, and always kind of, looking for more and taking more notes and stuff like that in your head, and really focusing on it, making that your mission. You have to have a purpose. You can't just sit there being miserable thinking about how I miss, how I, whatever. As far as torture, most people end up giving in over prolonged, berating. And I think people get talked into, well, this information won't hurt anything. What would it hurt to tell us your name? Because we already know your name. It's stenciled on your uniform or whatever. This kind of stuff. That once you start giving a little, you're like, well, what will that matter? That they won't use that to whatever. But if they can piece information together from multiple people, little tidbits. Well, if I tell them the time of the attack, they'll stop torturing me, but they won't know where it's going to be or how we're going to do it. And, all this different stuff, you got to realize that anything you give, can compromise, your family or whatever else, your teammates, your, unit, anything like that. So you need to be aware of what you're doing. You need to realize, who's going to be hurt by what you do and kind of focus on that. There's also disinformation, but you got to be careful with that. You got to realize, you don't have all the information and you might not be the smartest guy. So, and also when they find out that the things are inaccurate, it may bite you in the ass, especially if they're getting conflicting information from other people they captured. Maybe they captured other people after you didn't even realize that, some other people are captured. You don't know. So you need to be very careful with what you do. With that, torture, like I said, the only thing I can offer you, I have no firsthand experience with that. I just know I've been in some bad, uncomfortable situations, not where I was being tortured, but I know that it helps to have your mind somewhere else, to, focus on certain things and just kind of over and over again of, what your priorities are and what your mission is. If you give in to, that is gross that you're picking out my fingernails or whatever, if you're focused on that, it's going to destroy you and it's going to, eat at your brain until you end up giving in. Whereas I think if your mind is somewhere else, it's going to buy you time. It doesn't make things any better. It helps. That's all I got to say about that. I would say any notes and anything you can take, it's going to help. Now, it used to be, and I don't know how much the military's changed since I've been in there, but you're kind of obligated to try and escape. I mean, that is your duty as an American, is to kind of keep, moving forward. You're supposed to try and gather intel and get out of there. And that should always be your goal. If I got sent to jail, I kind of always thought in my mind, if I went to prison over 5 years, I could probably do 5 years. But after that, I'm not giving you my whole life. And I feel like my mind would always be like, I got to find a way to get out of here. And I know that if I'm in some, prison camp in Cambodia or something, that my mind is going to be focused on getting out of there. So you really always kind of need to be working towards that goal. So with that, there's a lot of cool things. I know there's a company called, I had to pull it up here in my notes, called Black Scout Concealment. And they have a belt that ends up hiding stuff inside it. A couple of spots, has like a cutout in the belt where in the back, you know, so you get your hands tied behind your back. You can kind of work your hands in there and pull out. Different companies sell different stuff. I know they have like ceramic razor blades are a thing. Great for cutting zip ties or duct tape or, you know, anything like that. You know, they have those plastic handcuff keys that you can tuck in there. They have ones that clip on your belt loops. I got another link I'll put on in the show notes that send you to those. I might even have a 10% off link. I'll see if I can dig one up. So those are kind of cool. Again, they'll hide in the pouch. One of the things the Navy SEALs, Special Forces guys, Green Berets, I hate to say it now, but, you know, it's kind of common knowledge. I've seen it kind of all over YouTube. So, you know, whatever. We'll just hope no bad guys are listening. But it's already been out there. It's not a big secret anymore. But, you know, those American flags that you always see on people's hats or on their shoulder patch or on their chest. A lot of those people will cut in a pocket and sew a pocket into those where they'll hide you know, another handcuff key. They'll hide ceramic razor blades. They'll hide, you know, maybe the little, you know, tool that they think they need. And it's just one more thing that people don't check that you're able to, you know, move in with. So, you know, again, I don't know, you know, how common knowledge that is, you know, but whatever. I know that it's out there. So it's your obligation to kind of, again, prepare. You know, you're responsible for you. And that's what I think people don't realize. People want to go through life with somebody to blame, somebody, you know, it's somebody else's fault. Somebody has to get me out of here. This isn't right. They're not playing fair. It's your job to prepare as a human being to, you know, be ready for this kind of thing and to plan, you know, ways to get out. Now, the one thing I find that people have issue with or don't seem to do is you always need to be thinking. You always need to say, you know, like there used to be that TV show MacGyver, right? MacGyver freaking, this guy, you know, would come up with solutions out of, you know, everything. Always looking, all right, well, these are the resources available to me. How can I get out of here? Now, again, if we can plan and have some greater resources like handcuff keys or different things, that's one more step. I know there's some videos out there how to get out of zip ties, how to get out of duct tape. What I can tell you with duct tape is you don't want to let it start to roll around the edges because, man, once that stuff rolls into a rope, that's a real nightmare to get out. So just keep that in mind. Try and keep it flat until you're ready to break out and make sure you go full force and don't worry about getting hurt when you try and break out of it because you want to make it in your first shot because every time you let those edges roll up a little bit more, it's going to get tougher and tougher. And I got to tell you, if they do so many wraps with the duct tape, eventually you're not getting out of it. But who knows, unless you got that little ceramic razor blade we're talking about, different things. I would say, you know, you've seen where people do the shoelace thing and they tie it and they kind of scissor kick or, you know, bicycle their way through the rope. That actually does work out pretty good for thicker zip ties or for tape. But again, you know, this is stuff you need to be aware of. And, you know, I can say that it sucks having a hood with smelly crap on it on your head when it smells like kerosene or, you know, like it's been on a barn floor for forever and you can barely breathe and you're sucking through a mask. That's not cool. So just things you might not want to get yourself in these positions. All right. Anyway, I got off task there a little bit. So when I was talking about MacGyver and that kind of stuff, you need to look for options. I don't know if you guys ever saw the movie War Games, but he's in the Air Force place underground, and they lock him in this room, and he looks around. He finds a way. He's the computer nerd. He finds some way to maybe disable the door lock. But that wasn't even what's so impressive to me. What was impressive was, all right, let me look through the cabinets. Let me see what option. Let me see if I can climb out ceiling tiles. Or let me see if I can kick through the wall into the next room. Things like that. I was watching some YouTube videos doing research for this and saw a guy, they had him handcuffed. He's sitting in an interrogation room. There's a video camera on him. He's got handcuffs, and they go through like a ring on the table that's holding him. And he just twists the handcuffs back and forth until he bends the chain connecting his handcuffs enough that it breaks loose, climbs up through the ceiling tiles, and ends up getting away. That's the kind of thing that you need to be thinking outside the box. Can I kick through the sheetrock into the next room where maybe it isn't so secure? Now, do you maybe do some listening and kind of check out and hope that they're not sitting there all having coffee in the next room? Yeah, these are, things you might want to consider. But, again, that's paying attention to the layout, watching, noticing when you're coming in, what's going on, where are they putting me? Maybe it's concrete. Maybe you got to, break through it. Maybe it's got heavy metal bars. You got to figure out your options and look for the best thing. Maybe you got to wait till they move you, or maybe the guy's bringing you food, or maybe you make some kind of, oh, look, I'm bleeding. You got to come in and help me. Maybe you're in a country where they don't care. They'll be like, yeah, whatever, bleed to death. You're good. It really depends. But you need to always be moving forward and looking for options. I saw another video doing research for this. A guy is in the back of the police car, and they bring him into the police garage, and two cops are over there chatting it up, distracted, going on, with their normal lives. And he's sitting in the cop car, and it wasn't really clear if he kind of got up to the front seat and went out that door, or if the back door just wasn't locked, or, I don't really know how he was able to get out of the police car. But I know the guy was in handcuffs, and he waited till the moment that the garage door was coming down and closing, and he just kicks open the police car door, jumps out, and is able to run right out underneath the door as it's closing. And by the time the cops realized what was going on, it took them 5 minutes to get the door back up. And because it was like a kind of we buzzed you in kind of thing. And the guys who opened the door were in another room, and, nobody's paying attention. They're going about their business. And I'm just saying, look for any opportunity. This is exactly, why we prepare, though. Speaking of preparing, you guys know I've been plugging that TAC Pack, right? And basically it's one of these, every month they send you a box of gun gear, and it's gun gear, everyday carry gear, self-reliant tools. The cost never changes. It's like $49.95 a month. And the next box it says is the box that defines TAC Pack. It's a $205 value for $49.95, because what they do is it says they teamed up with an American-made defense manufacturer to make an item that will blow you away. Jump in now before we sell out. So I'm excited. It says, once we send this box out, we're going to show you what your AR-15 could look like if you were a TAC Pack survivor. So I don't want you guys to be sad like, oh, I missed it. I missed this great opportunity to get in on something cool. They're saying this box, $205 value. Now, the thing is, you got to act fast, because it's this week that is the deadline in order to make the next box that they do. And I don't know, if it's Tuesday, Wednesday, whenever you're listening to this podcast, you want to jump on it. All I know is, hey, try it out for 1 month. If you don't feel you got tremendous value, you got an awesome opportunity, then, maybe you change it and you move on. But maybe you're going to be like, wait, this is a great fit for me, and I freaking love TAC Pack. So, there's all these different crate club and different things and things out there. They all have different stuff. But basically, Tac Pack is for gun guys. It's just gun stuff for the most part. You love AR-15s. I mean, if you don't own an AR-15, Tac Pack's probably not right for you. But then again, maybe going out and buying an AR-15 is what's right for you. Then subscribe to Tac Pack. That way you can set it up the way it should be, and put all the cool things, the different, options they have out there for you. So anyway, I was excited about it. I can't wait to see what's in there. I'm freaking counting the days, I'm like, ooh, when's this thing going to get here? I can see what's going on. Anyway, if you use the code BADASS, they'll also throw in a gun cleaning kit, a gun cleaning mat. I misspoke there. So the idea is they're going to send you cool gun parts. Then you're going to get the freaking gun cleaning mat, go with it, throw that down, install the new parts. I mean, that just sounds like a win for everybody. So I don't know. All I know is if you like gun parts, and I like gun parts, you like AR-15s, I like AR-15s, you might want to head over there because this is the time to do it. With this high dollar, option, that sounds like a win for everybody, and they always have great stuff. That's the thing. It's not that this month is the awesome month. It's that they constantly have great stuff. And a lot of it is, stuff I didn't know I needed, stuff, cool ideas that I hadn't seen before. These are guys who are in it, who are, seeing the different stuff. They know what works. They know what's important. And they go out and they search out the best deals and they bring them to you. So if that's something you're into, you like, accessorizing your guns, maybe this is something you guys need to, jump on. So that's all. I just, hey, thought I'd throw that out there. Plus, when you support our sponsors, you're supporting me and Kevin and, helping us out. So it's kind of a win for everybody. And, so far we've been able to just promote, people who are like-minded and really have the same values that we do and, have the same mindset. I mean, just entrepreneurs, Americans out there doing for themselves, taking care of stuff. Those are, where we should be spending our money, not with nonsense. So that's all I got on that one. Also, when you got the ARs going, all kinds of excitement. You're out in the woods, you're trying it out. You go out, you get excited. There's My Medic. You need first aid. You need a good IFAK. That's an individual first aid kit, or, different people have different names for that. I don't know how that's possible, but whatever. You need to have this kind of stuff handy, maybe a trauma bag, or, they make some cool ones for, full medic bags, or they actually, the one that I recently got was the suture kit. Just being able to, do stitches and stuff like that, something to add to the bag, my overall medic bag. And that kind of stuff really, is what makes the difference, is being able to handle stuff when it comes up. That's being prepared. They're mymedic.us. If you, again, same code, turns out you type in the word badass, 15% off. It's going to take you places. So, different stuff like that. Again, you support them, you support us. You also know you can support us on Patreon. You go to patreon.com/preppingbadass. And that's about that. You guys should be subscribed on maybe our YouTube channel. We've been starting to add some videos, throwing some new stuff in there. Kevin's out doing some camping, hopefully getting some video for us. Hopefully he'll come back with some good stuff. We got some new gear that he's been trying out and trying to implement. Hopefully, he comes back. I'm hoping that the gear comes back in one piece. Some of the stuff is so cool. I didn't want to let it out of the house, and Kevin's taking it in the woods, and I gotta say, he's been known to break some knives, and somehow thinks knife, crowbar, synonymous. I don't know. I'm just saying, you gotta look out for this kind of stuff. But You guys need to subscribe to the YouTube. Subscribe maybe on iTunes or wherever you're downloading this podcast. Maybe leave us a review. That kind of stuff helps us spread the word. More people we can reach out to, the less I need to nag you about, our cool stuff here. And with that, stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.
Planning a fishing trip shouldn't feel like a full-time job. With fishingbooker.com, you can find and book the perfect fishing trip within minutes. Fishingbooker.com connects you with trusted fishing captains around the world. Booking is fast, easy, and secure, with access to verified customer reviews, loyalty rewards, and around-the-clock customer support. Everything you need to book with confidence is in one place. So head to fishingbooker.com and start planning your next fishing adventure today.